This week, instead of focusing on women who have been killed by their boyfriends, husbands, or exes, we're going to focus on women whose murder attempts weren't successful. We're going to start with the most recent one in time, and then the rest of them are not in any particular order. On August 31st of this year, Debora Romo's boyfriend poured gasoline on her and set her on fire inside of her living room. Her 10-year-old granddaughter happened to hear her screaming and came running.
So then she came out and she's seen my mom's ex-boyfriend pouring gasoline on her while she was on the floor.
Then he was standing and pouring gasoline on her, and she started crying, and I pushed him and I tried to hit him, but he still continued doing it.
And then other family members followed, trying to put the fire out.
Her hair, her eyes, her smile. How does somebody go from looking like this to this? Debora Romo's family calls it the work of a monster.
He wanted to kill her. He wanted her to burn.
Of course, things in the home got damaged also because things caught on fire as they were trying to help her.
Debora is burning alive. The flames shooting off her body, including her face. The heat so intense, it's causing unimaginable pain. And as she ran outside to put the flames out on her own body, she discovers the water has been turned off. A kind of horrific torture.
She grabbed a bucket of malt water and she poured it on herself.
She ended up having, one thing said 30, another said 35% of her body was burned on her head, shoulders, and her chest. She was intubated and seriously injured. Debora's 52. This is going to kind of flip from what we normally see. Her boyfriend, Roberto Colcom, was 43. So on a rare occasion, she's the older person in this relationship with a good amount of age distance, but that doesn't seem to help her here.
The family says Romo was in an abusive relationship with Calahan, but they never expected the abuse to go this far.
So Colcom was arrested driving her vehicle after the attack, and he's been charged with arson and aggravated assault with serious bodily injury. I don't understand why he wasn't charged with attempted murder, because clearly that was the goal. But aggravated assault with serious bodily injury and arson, and she could certainly use your prayers as she's fighting for her life. Sheronica Virgil, who's a mother of 4, endured about 8 years, one said 8 years, one said 10 years, of abuse to keep her family together, but she escaped when he nearly killed her. Within their first year of dating, said that Sheronica noticed red flags. She noticed that he became quick-tempered and that he was insecure. It started verbally at first, Sheronica said. There are levels to it. She thought that she could change him. She learned what triggered him and how to best keep him happy, which is very common in domestic violence relationships. Sheronica left her relationship multiple times, but he would apologize or show changed behavior for a little bit of time, and she would be convinced to take him back or to go back. But in 2016, he almost choked her to death, and that's when she knew it was time to leave the relationship for good. Now, on one hand, I really appreciate, she said, my process didn't take a day. It was maybe over a year to really get the plan out into play, and she worked on saving enough money to leave over the course of about a year. Now, if your life is not in immediate danger, then that's doable. Sometimes people spend a long time working on getting out, and if that's what it takes for you to get out safely, then do that. Sometimes people work a long time on getting out and they don't make it, so be aware of that. She did. One thing that I want to note about her case, when she did leave, she went to an undisclosed location. And she talked in this article about him being angry with her and wanting to fight her, I believe, for the kids, like over the kids. Not that he wanted them entirely, but he was trying to fight her about them. And part of how she was able to have any kind of control, any kind of power in her relationship, in her situation, was that she went somewhere that he didn't know where she was. And given the years of abuse and the fact that he had almost choked her to death, it would be very reasonable to assume that if she would have gone to like a family member's house or a friend's house that he knew, he would have completed it. So huge tip there. Go somewhere that they can't access you. Go somewhere that they don't know where you are. Whether that is a hidden shelter somewhere, or that's your second great aunt's third cousin on your grandpa's side that they don't know exists, or an old coworker that you stayed in contact with, somebody that there is not an immediate connection with, that they're not going to be able to find you. That's the best way to stay alive once you're out of the situation. Leaving in itself is a whole nother thing, but once you're out, be in an undisclosed location. So it's been 5 years since Sheronica left her abusive relationship. Now she's enjoying her new fiance, growing her food truck business called Maja Wings, and she has her own radio show, giving platform to victims and survivors of domestic violence. The show is called The Fellowship Hall. On January 24th, 2012, Melissa was just 20 years old. She was studying to be a nurse, and she had recently broken up with her longtime boyfriend. They'd been broken up for about 3 months at this point, and he was requesting closure. He had been calling her, and he was like, I just want one last hug. Just one last hug. And she gave in. That seems pretty reasonable. A little bit of closure for somebody that you cared about.
He reached his arms around me for the hug that he was crying on the phone for, and the moment he squeezed me, he actually flipped a switchblade open that was hiding in his hand, and he first stabbed me in the shoulder, then the neck, on the back of my neck, and then the side of my face. And that was the beginning of a fight for my life.
Melissa said that she screamed, she wailed, she ran for help, and she landed in the road in front of her house. It's really gruesome, but that is when my mouth filled with blood and I knew this man is here to kill me. And everything in life came flashing in that moment, Melissa said. Her ex-boyfriend would go on to stab her 32 times in total, 29 of them with a bigger knife.
Thankfully, 2 teenagers at a nearby park came to the rescue.
My ex-boyfriend was straddling me in the road, actually stabbing me. His knees were on each side of me, and the young man pulled him off of me, and the girl was on the phone with 911 the whole time. So I think these are my angels.
Her ex-boyfriend left her laying on the ground in a pool of blood. Melissa was found by police on patrol and taken to the ICU. I said my final prayer and thought, this is it, she said. Trauma surgeons worked on Melissa for 5 hours. She flatlined 4 times and had a stroke due to the loss of blood, but Melissa fought hard.
When I woke up, I couldn't believe it. I remember touching myself, touching the tube. I was intubated, and I was like, I'm alive, like I am alive. I was just so appreciative. I can remember it like coming over my body. I was so grateful that I was alive. And my mom was right there, and she just said, I love you. Squeeze my hand if you know it's me.
Now, 12 years later, after multiple reconstructive surgeries, Melissa is now a speaker and an advocate speaking out against domestic violence. You're going to notice a trend here. She has proudly worked for a nonprofit in Florida called Hands Across the Bay since 2013.
I have made it my passion to speak about dating violence and domestic violence and talk to parents and talk to teenagers because it's just so important. Domestic violence can happen to anybody. So a lot of people think it's not going to happen to me.
For Melissa, each day she's fulfilling her life's purpose as to why she was spared on that horrific night.
If you're a victim of domestic violence, if you're a survivor of domestic violence, one of the best ways to heal is to help. It is empowering. It gives you a feeling of having some sense of control in your life when everything else seems really chaotic and you feel like you can make a difference. And maybe you don't feel like you and yourself are good enough yet, but you can be there for somebody else who's been in that situation too. You can hold them while they cry. You can lift them up. You can listen to them. You can understand them. That's a gift, to have somebody that you can talk to who actually understands what you're talking about, because intimate partner violence is very common, and yet people who haven't experienced it do not understand. So to have somebody who's been there in some form or fashion that can say, I believe you and I understand the hurt and I understand the fear, that's so valuable. While it sucks to have gone through those things, this is your empowerment moment. A lot of these women took that moment when they survived and they're given the opportunity, what are you going to do with your life? They said, I'm going to be powerful in this way, and I'm going to reach out and help other people that are struggling in domestic violence and intimate partner violence situations. When she tried to break up with her boyfriend, he attacked her and he stabbed her 30 times.
A year and a half into the relationship, he moved in with me. And we were going to get married. It had been some signs before this time, signs even to the point where the Lord spoke to me and told me that he was not the one for me. And I ignored that still small voice, and I went on because at that time I wanted to settle down and I wanted to be married. And sometimes you think they'll change, or sometimes you think they may stop, but however they started out, that's how most of the time end up. And one thing I've learned in that situation, that you cannot change no one. It has to be in their heart to change. Amen. If it's not in their heart to change, they will continue on the same path. So he got to the point where he was verbal abusive. He wasn't physical, but it was very verbal. And there was something that I was not used to, and I did not want to get used to it. So he would do that, and he would apologize, and I would forgive him, and he would do it again, and he would apologize. It was just like a vicious circle over and over and over again. I'm a hairstylist, so we went to Atlanta to a hair show, and this when the real true him came out. And we got on the road, and we argued, I think, from Georgia to Florida, all the way back. And I was telling him, when we get to Florida, I just want you to get your stuff and leave. There's nothing else for us to talk about. By then, he had bought me a diamond ring because, I said we was going to get married. The lady from the jeweler, she called me and she said, your ring is ready and you can come and pick it up. He came home from work that day, and I told him, I said, here's your receipt. I said, take this receipt, go and get your money back, and with the money, find you a place to stay. He told me had he had to leave my house, my kids wouldn't recognize me when they saw me again. He said he would burn my house down. At this time, I was fearful of my life, but I did not let him know that how much fear I was really in. So that was on a Monday, and that Tuesday, I was working, and I was done for the day, so I went to the mall. And when I was at the mall, he called my phone probably about 15 to 20 times, just calling back to back to back. And when I went outside of the mall, I could hear, when he called me, I could hear it, wherever he was, it was the same noise and sound that I heard. So he was in that parking lot that day at that mall. And I said, I'm tired of talking to you. He said, well, after today, you won't have to worry about that anymore. Not thinking that he was going to try to take my life that day. And only thing he said to me was, you didn't love me. And by that time, he flipped me over the chair, bust my head into the wall. He had took his shirt off and a tank top he had on. He tried to take it and tie it around my neck. And I was just trying to fight and keep away. And he dragged me from the living room into the kitchen.
When we got into the kitchen, that's when he got a knife and he cut across my neck with the knife. And by me trying to hold the knife off of my neck, he cut all of the tendons in my fingers and he cut this finger off. Then once he got done with that knife, he threw that knife down and got another one with a sharp edge.
And that's when he began to stab me all over my body.
All over my face, neck, back, everywhere he could stab me. My head, everywhere. So
all the while he was stabbing me, I was pleading the blood of Jesus over my life. That's all I could do was call on the name of the Lord. So they got into the helicopter some kind of way, I don't know. But I remember getting in that helicopter and I was in so much pain. And they flight me to the trauma center in Manatee County.
At the trauma center at Blake Medical Center, I heard the doctor say that day she has 30 stab wounds in her body, but no main arteries or veins cutting her body. And I just lifted up my hands and began to praise God that he kept me that day and I didn't die that day, she said. She has since created a nonprofit organization called Queens of Domestic Violence Awareness. Their mission is to educate and to inform women that they don't have to stay in abusive relationships because there is help out there. Rhonda is the president and the founder of the group. She says that she started Queens of Domestic Violence Awareness to help educate women on the signs of abuse to look for early and to help anyone in need. We help women if they need to stay in a hotel, if they need food, if they need Pampers, whatever they need, and then we can help them. That's what we do, Rhonda said. She has this advice for anyone trying to get out safely. Don't let the guy know. Don't tell them. Just get your stuff, whatever you can. If you have to leave with the clothes on your back, just leave. And she's saying that because she tried to tell him she was leaving. She tried to break up with him, and there are definitely abusers that you just don't want to do that step with. They say that it's rude to break up with somebody through text messages. There are some people that you don't even need that much. It would endanger you. She also believes that abused women need to speak out and stop hiding what is going on at home before it's too late. Let somebody know, she said. No more secrets anymore. Tell somebody and try to get out of that situation as safely as possible.
It's all ourselves. And you think people will change, they're not going to change. Right. So if you're in a relationship like that and you hear that still small voice saying, get out while you can, and get out safely.
On January 19th of 2017, Dohme, sounds kind of like mustard, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, was reportedly stalking her in New Amsterdam. Dressed like a woman, wearing a wig and a dress, he reportedly visited her home twice, but she wasn't there, so he hid in her yard and waited for her. Around 8:30 p.m., Shondell entered her yard and was confronted by the woman who she quickly realized was her ex. If I can't have you, no man will.
We had problem. He was abusive, and I think it was time to let go, but I guess he wasn't in that state to let go. So he was like, if he can't get me, anybody else, nobody else can.
And he threw a corrosive substance on her face. Shondell was severely burnt on her face, her chest, and other parts of her body, so much so that she was left blind and disfigured by the acid.
Every time I leave it, I always move home back by my mother. And he would come and he would say he's sorry and he won't do it again, and I would just forgive him. Because it's long now we're together, and I don't want to leave him and go and get somebody else, and maybe I'll end up into worse. So I just used to say maybe he would change, but he never did. Well, they talked to me, they looked at me, but they won't be very close to me. If I say come touch me, they will say no, but they're just there talking to me as normal. That is painful.
The Saving Hands Emergency Aid Incorporated, or SHAE, I think is how it's pronounced, Foundation, has enabled Shondell to travel to the United States for treatment. She's undergone years of intense medical treatment, including reconstructive surgeries. In one of those surgeries, a bone from her rib was used to graft her nose, and vision correction. She's now able to see again. I believe I read that it took 2 years before she was able to see again.
I would just like to encourage that person to get out of it fast, even to the first hit. Don't think it will done there. It will continue. Like I did, I was staying and say it will stop, but it lead to this. Just don't stay any longer. Just get out of it fast.
This dude had been previously wanted for being in possession of narcotics for the purpose of trafficking. He's been charged with attempted murder in this case.
I stood there and knocked. I guess my friend, she didn't hear on the first knock. So I was standing there like this way, and something was like, Shondell, turn to your left. When I turned to my left, I saw him approaching me. I know it was him. The walk, the body structure, everything, his face, but it's just the way he looked so strange. So I left staring at him, because he had these like weave in his hair, and he had like a female garment on. So it left me shocked, and so I just left staring at him. By the time I could do anything, he just threw, I don't know, the acid on me, the liquid. And there I was standing, screaming, knocking on the door for my friend. While knocking on the door, she opened, because I was screaming for her. She opened. She was like, what is this? What happened to you? I was like, it's Alfred. And she ran out, and she called the landlord upstairs. She guided me to the washroom, and she told me to throw water. I was like, no, I'm scared, because I didn't know what to do. I was just there in the bathroom, just sitting. I stripped up all my clothes. You also said to me that you think this happened for a reason, that God has a plan. Tell me a little bit more about that. Well, Indeed, I think God has a plan for me, so I can be a testimony to others. I could be closer to Him, and when I walk, people should look at me and say, well, yes, indeed, she's a testimony. God has saved her, because look what she was, and look what she is now today.
Some days I would be driving down the street and I just see flashbacks of the incident, and sometimes I would have nightmares and I'd be running and he'd be chasing me in my dreams. And I just had to pray and ask God to heal me from all this, heal me from all this and let you know that God is good. He didn't have to do it, but He did. And I thank Him for it. I'm so grateful for Him keeping me. Reason, because I could have got stabbed one time and died, but I got stabbed 30 times. And He kept me, and I owe Him my life. I owe Him whatever He did. He's happy to do.